don't know if I should have my glasses on or off, because like off is like, you know, look at my makeup, look at my face, but on is like, you know, I can see. Hey guys, and welcome to a very overdue second YouTube video on the Quartz Girl channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my new PC, well, my remodeled PC, and go through all of the parts with you, the building process, and just show off how amazing it looks. If you watched my last video or have seen any of my TikToks, you will know that I used to have a really ugly PC case. It was just a silver little tower, and it was basically like, it looked like a PC that you'd get in secondary school, just like a work or office PC. Like, it didn't look like a cool gaming PC at all. It had like gaming parts put into it, but it was quite small and not purpose built, and it just looked ugly, and I used to hide it under my desk because of how disgusting it was. But I finally decided to buy a new case and migrate all of my parts into this new case, and it looks literally flawless. Like, I love it so much. So yeah, let's go through my new PC. This PC is so much cleaner than my old one. It's actually like really aesthetically pleasing to look at, and I have it on my desk next to my monitors just because it is so pretty. It's got some, like, you know, lights inside, some RGB fans to make it look a little bit nicer, and it's got a tempered glass side, so it just looks amazing. But before I actually talk about the case in depth, I'm going to go through all of the parts, because some of my parts have changed, some of them are still the same. Because I have a more in-depth knowledge about the parts now, since I've taken the PC apart and put it back together again, I feel like I can talk you through that a little bit more. I'll also be talking about the building process as well, because it's something that I found really intimidating to go into, but once I've actually done it, it was so much easier than I expected. And even though there is some anxiety around it, it wasn't hard at all, and it's something that I feel like anyone could do just with a sort of push. If I could build my own PC and put all the parts together, I can guarantee you that anyone can do it. So let me talk about the parts first. So the parts I'm going to be talking about today are the motherboard, the RAM, the graphics card, the power supply, the storage, the CPU, and the case. I don't know why I've written them down in that order, but I have. As you guys know, I had a fully built PC already, and most of these parts are parts that I migrated from that old case into this new one. During the process of migration, a few of my parts got damaged, which was literally just due to carelessness. To be completely honest, I wasn't very careful when moving my motherboard around, and I think I accidentally static shocked it, which led to it being damaged and just needing replacing. In the process of moving my case around, my hard drive also fell out of the case and smashed against the concrete floor, so that also doesn't boot up anymore. Lost a terabyte of files on my old hard drive, but I have bought some new storage systems, so it's all good. It worked out in the end, I guess. The new motherboard I have is the Gigabyte GAH81M S2V socket 1150. All of the extra sort of letterings on the end are just the name, so you can identify what it is, but at the end of the day, it's basically just a motherboard I found that was compatible with my CPU and my RAM, because I already had my CPU and RAM. I just needed to make sure that those components would fit into this motherboard. I stuck my RAM and my CPU into PC Parts Picker and just figured out what was compatible with it. Because my old motherboard was quite ancient, it was hard to find a new motherboard which would be compatible with my old parts. I ended up buying this motherboard because it was sort of the only one I could find anywhere online that was compatible with the parts. I picked it up off of PCBits.com. I really like this motherboard because it's black, so it sort of blends in with the back of the case. My old motherboard was bright green, so it wasn't the best looking motherboard in the world, but this one looks a little bit nicer. It is a bit smaller and more compact, but I don't really mind. It just blends in with all the parts at the back of the case and it looks great, and it gets the job done. I don't really know what else to say about a motherboard because it's just a motherboard. Next, I'll talk about my RAM. My RAM is the same as the RAM I had in my old PC. It is just two 8GB sticks of DDR3 RAM. It's just what I had and what's compatible with my motherboard. So I've got 16GB of RAM in total. As I said in my last video, 16GB of RAM is not necessary. You can get 2 4 sticks and just have 8GB of RAM in your PC and you'll be able to run most games. I just have 16 because it's what came with my PC when I bought it, luckily. It's also good to get more RAM if you have loads of programs open at once, like video editing softwares, Google Chrome, having a game open, or if you're looking to stream and you'll have Streamlabs and Discord and a game open, it's better to have a little bit more RAM so you don't like overload your PC. Even while I'm streaming, 16GB of RAM is perfect. I've never had any issues with it. I don't really play very many intensive games, so it doesn't use up a lot of my memory, but if you are planning to play more AAA titles, as I said before, it might be better for you to look into getting some more RAM. My graphics card is just the same graphics card that I had before. It is the GeForce 1060 GTX. It's just a really good graphics card. It's a bit older now, so it likely would be a bit cheaper, but it's just a good mid-tier graphics card. It runs all the games I would need it to run, but yet again, if you're going to be playing AAA titles, then it might not be the best graphics card for you. It runs everything I need it to run at a pretty good frame rate with decent graphics, so I'm not complaining. I don't really feel like I need an upgrade anytime soon, so I'm happy with it for now. My power supply is just the CX550 from Corsair. It's just a bronze level power supply. It's what came with my PC when I first got it. It works perfectly with all of my parts, so there's no need for me to change it. I've never had any issues with my power supply, so I don't really feel the need to change it. It works perfectly and it doesn't look too bad either in the bottom of the case. For my storage, I previously had a 1TB hard drive and that was it. But since I had the opportunity to upgrade, I decided to get myself an SSD and a HDD this time around. I realised that when I used to boot up my PC, it took so long to boot up and it was just a really nice quality of life change to have an SSD. Things load so much faster when I first boot up. I'm able to launch League of Legends within the first 10 seconds of booting instead of having to wait 3 to 4 minutes for everything to load up. So it is really nice to have an SSD. The SSD I have is a Samsung 860 EVO and it's 500GB. It's just a really good SSD. If you're looking for an SSD, this is the one that most people will recommend to you. It's the one that my boyfriend had in his PC, so I just decided to go for the same thing. It works great and it's obviously just a slim little black box, so it fits really nicely with the rest of my PC case. My hard drive is a Seagate 1TB Barracuda HDD. If you're looking between getting an SSD or a hard drive, I would definitely say get a hard drive first. SSDs are typically smaller in size for the same price point, so if you're building a PC and thinking between getting one or the other, I would definitely say get a hard drive first. Get yourself the extra storage because games are a lot bigger than you'd expect them to be. A lot of smaller games are just about 10 to 15 gigs, but you can get some really big games like Ark, which is about 100 gigs and will take up a lot of space if you only have a 500GB SSD. It might mean that your PC will take a little bit longer to boot up, but I would say it's definitely worth waiting the extra 2 minutes at boot up to be able to have the extra storage for your games. However, in my opinion, now having an SSD after so long, I would definitely say it's an amazing quality of life change, and if you do have the money, try and invest in one. I used to feel anxious about turning off my PC because I knew I'd have to wait 5 to 10 minutes when it started back up again. But now that I have an SSD, I find myself turning off my PC whenever I'm done with it because I know that it will boot up really quickly whenever I next need it again. My CPU is the Intel Core i5-4590 at 3.3 GHz. It's just the CPU that I got with my original PC. It works great for me. I never find it getting too overloaded, and I used to leave my PC on for weeks at a time and there was no issues. I know that's really bad for the PC, but I found no problems with it. Now let's talk about my case. I am so excited to talk about my case because it's literally the best thing I invested in ever. It was about £50 from Amazon, so on the much cheaper end of PC cases, you can spend up to about £200 to £300 on cases if they're branded. It is a Ions KZ08 mid case in Arctic White. I decided to get a mid case just so I could fit it on my desk rather than go for the full size tower. Included in the price point was also 3 RGB fans. You can't select the colours they are, they just spin in a rainbow, but I think it's a really nice touch and a really nice addition to the case. It makes it look so pretty and it adds a really nice vibe when you're gaming late at night. It has a tempered glass side panel, which was the selling point for me. I was definitely looking for a case that had a glass side panel to be able to see the parts inside, because I really wanted to decorate the inside of my PC with figurines. As you can see, I was originally going to get a pink case, but I then realised there weren't that many options for pink cases, and the options that are there are very pricey. So I instead opted for a white one, and I literally couldn't be happier with it. For the price point, it is amazing. It's so clean, it fits perfectly in the space that I needed to put it in, and it just looks so sleek. It's really nicely sized as well. It means that I can fit all of my parts in and still have loads of excess space to fill with figurines and other cute bits and pieces just to make it look really nice. And the space also means that you can see all of the parts really nicely. I know that my parts aren't the prettiest, but it still is really cool to be able to look at all the parts inside, knowing that I put them all together and I built them. And it makes me feel really proud just looking at it. Now, time to talk about the building process of the PC. When I originally was migrating my parts from my old case into my new one, I asked my boyfriend for help. It was while my boyfriend was helping me that the motherboard was damaged, and then when he took it to his dad's house so his dad could check, the hard drive got damaged. It made me realise that I wanted to build my PC completely on my own. I didn't want anybody else to be responsible for damaging parts. I didn't want to feel anger towards anybody because they had damaged parts in my PC or because something happened and it was their fault. I wanted to do it myself, so that way if something went wrong, I could take full responsibility for it and I could know it was my fault and because of me being irresponsible. The most anxiety-inducing part of rebuilding my PC was moving my CPU into a new motherboard. When thinking about the task, it is literally one of the easiest things ever. It's like picking up a tiny square and then putting it into the slot on the motherboard. However, if you do it wrong, it can bend the pins and completely damage your CPU, so it is quite scary. But realistically, when you get down to it, it's not actually that hard to do. You just feel a bit of anxiety when you're about to do it. Aside from that, the rest of the building process was actually very easy and simple, and once I'd got the CPU out of the way, the rest of it literally was so easy and it was actually very fun. When I first got the case, it came with standoffs in it, so I just had to put the motherboard straight in. I attached the CPU to my motherboard before putting the motherboard into the case, just to make it a lot easier for myself. So when I put the motherboard into the case, the CPU and CPU fan were already attached. I then slotted my RAM into the RAM slots. It's simple as pushing them in and then clicking them in. I then slotted my graphics card into the graphics card slot. I attached my SSD and my hard drive and then plugged them into the SATA slots on the motherboard. And this is when things got a bit tricky with cable management. So one thing I knew about my PC is that I wanted to have good cable management. Because it's got the glass side, you're going to see all of the cables inside, and I didn't want it to just be like a massive pile. Luckily, this case has like a back panel to store all your cables in. I think a lot of cases that have glass sides have this back panel. I ran pretty much all of my cables through this back slot to try and keep it as tidy as possible, but somehow still managed to make a mess of it. With certain pieces, you just can't hide the cabling. It just has to be in plain sight. A lot of big cables like the front panel USB and audio cables were quite big and went straight across the front of my PC. So as annoying as it is, they just have to be there. I also have 3 RGB fans in different places, which meant the cabling for those fans were sort of all over the place, but I tried to make it work as best that I could. It is a bit time consuming and frustrating trying to get the cable management in your PC right so that it looks aesthetically pleasing, but I think it's definitely worth putting the time in because it just makes it look so much cleaner and it means that you can see all of the parts really nicely. There were some aspects of building my PC where I had to search for YouTube videos to help me or Google diagrams, like which front panel connectors go where and how to put the CPU into the motherboard, just because that made me feel so anxious. But in the end, I built the machine entirely by myself with no help, and it felt amazing to plug my monitors in, plug the power cable in, turn it on, and it booted up. It is such a thrilling feeling to know that something that you spent so much money and time on actually worked perfectly. And knowing that I did it all on my own was so satisfying. It just looks so pretty, like I'm just so proud of it. It's so amazing to have it on my desk and see it every day and be able to turn it on and it just turns on. Like, it's so great having this PC here, like it's just amazing. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'm sorry that I took so long to upload a second video. Thank you so much for the support on my first one. It is amazing to see it doing so well and knowing that so many people enjoyed it and found it useful. I hope this video can inspire you to go out and build your own PC, because if I can do it, anyone can do it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you can check me out on TikTok where I try to post every day, and you can also follow me on Twitch where I stream on Tuesdays and Fridays. I've also finally, after so many requests, started a Discord server, so if you'd like to join that, the link will be down below where we can hang out and play games. If you like this video, please hit that thumbs up and consider subscribing. I'm trying to make more videos like this and put them out as often as possible, so hopefully there will be more from me very soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!